Hello and welcome to Vivork. I'm Brian Watrous. This week I'm working in and recording from Beijing, China. And while I've been here this week, I learned a new trick. Now, just to be fair here, this is not some super secret trick. In fact, what I'm about to show you is something that people all around the world know how to do. But it's actually new to me. I'm from the US, I speak English, and so when I use tools like the vSphere client, they normally run, or they run by default in English. But take a look here and watch what happens here. I'm going to run my vSphere client, just clicking on the same icon as I usually do. But notice when I do that instead of coming up in the usual English characters, we have here Chinese simplified characters. So what I've done here is to change the locale. This is the same vSphere client. It's not a separate install. It's not a separate program. It's the same vSphere client, but I've changed the locale to Chinese. If I log in, root and password, I get the same messages I'd ordinarily get. So for instance, here it's complaining about my self-signed certificate, so I'll say ignore. I also have another issue going on with my certificates, ignoring that though. As you can see, the tool works the exact same way it normally does. It's just all the messages have been internationalized into Chinese. Let's see, I've got 49 days left of my eval license. We'll go ahead and continue. And here's my vSphere client. Now, for me this week, what's been really useful about having this capability is as I work with my colleagues here, at times I need to translate what I'm seeing on their screen to what I'm accustomed to seeing. I can kind of guess my way through. I know this is the Getting Started tab and the Summary tab and so forth, but I can get a little bit clearer idea of what's going on if let me put this one over here on the left. I can put my vSphere client, using my vSphere client that's in Chinese on one side and the vSphere client that's in English over on the other side, and that way as I go back and forth between different screens I can see what's going on, and it just makes my life a lot easier. Now, the way this works is actually pretty simple. I did not install a new version of the vSphere client. I simply changed the way the vSphere client's being invoked. So if I go to Properties, ordinarily the vSphere client launches vpxclient.exe with no additional arguments, but as you can see here, I've added in -locale zh_cn. I'll explain what the zh_cn is. You can probably guess what the cn portion is, but it's this part of the command line invocation that's causing the vSphere client to behave the way it is. Now, as I'm sure you know, that there's not just the vSphere client, but there's also another tool called the vSphere web client. Let me bring that one up. So here's the vSphere web client where I've already logged in, and if you've used the vSphere web client, you know that the URL that you type to log in using the vSphere web client is https followed by vcva.vivork.info is the fully qualified domain name of my vCenter server, :9443/vSphere client. That's the form of the URL that you'd normally type to get into the vSphere client. And as you can see, the vSphere client is normally in English. Now, you can, let me jump over this next tab, explicitly state which locale you want used. Here I'm saying I want the locale for English. So IAN is the language, English is the language I want used here, and specifically the US flavor of English. So by simply adding $locale equals and then this code to specify which language and specifically which country version of that language, the vSphere client, the vSphere web client will then use its internationalization capabilities to show you the vSphere web client in that particular language. Now, if instead of saying EN_US, which is the default, over here on this screen, you'll notice I've typed ZH_CN, so China, so Chinese, specifically spoken in China, is what that code is indicating. And as you can see here, once again, we've got simplified Chinese characters. Now, so far you've seen the English locale, you've seen the Chinese locale. There are other locales that you can take advantage of if you happen to need them. So for instance, here's Korean, here's French, here's German, and here's Japanese. And the same codes that I'm using here in the vSphere web client, I could use with the vSphere client. Recall in the vSphere client, if I go into properties, instead of saying -locale zn underscore, zh underscore cn, if I had said instead -locale ja underscore jp, then the vSphere web client would be in Japanese. Now again, this is nothing new to those of you who live overseas, but for those of us in the US, this is probably something that we haven't seen. If you want more information, take a look at KB article 1016403, which, as you can see, goes into detail explaining exactly what I've been showing you. So in the top section, it shows you how to use the vSphere web client. The key information here for modern vCenter servers is down here. And then below there, it explains that in the vSphere web client, you can simply append, as I've just shown you, these different locales to get the vSphere web client to behave using the language of your choice. Now again, I don't know that you guys will ever find this useful. It's helping me here from Beijing this week. If this helps any of you, that's great. If not, it's just a little interesting thing I thought I'd share with you guys. See you in the next video.